I got a question. Have you started up a game and over time as you played it, something didn't feel right? Like something was off? I've asked questions like that before, and over the last couple of years, one question in particular has stuck in my mind. Why do most games coming out feel so soulless and bland? And if you've ever felt that disconnect, that nagging sense that something has been missing from modern games, then I can safely say that you are not alone in how you feel. And in this video, I'm going to break down a couple reasons as to why so many games feel so boring, soulless, lifeless, and just flat out not fun to play. And the first point I'm going to get into out of three is, are we just jaded? Is that really what it comes down to? Have we just become so nihilistic and jaded over the years because of so much bad games coming out, overshadowing good gems out there? I think there is some truth to that statement, but if I'm going to be completely honest, I think there's a logical reason for the most part why we do feel so jaded. I mean, when you look at a lot of these modern releases, you could tell that they went through HR and were sort of funneled in front of shareholders to basically show how safe, quote unquote, it is. And that does lead to lack of risks being taken and lack of a magic sort of feel in these newer games. Even newer entries from older titles from like 20 years ago even have this same similar feeling of just lack of magic or passion. And really lack of soul even. Because you, again, the same example I used with HR, it really does feel like a lot of these modern games are just being pushed out to appease shareholders. And a lot of the times too, here's another point, they're being marketed as having stunning graphics and high fidelity with Unreal Engine 5 or 5.3, where now nanite technology is expanding. Like those kind of headlines you see. And I hate to say it, but a lot of these games with those big, beautiful graphics and features, those sort of tech demos, a lot of the times they have weak stories, characters that aren't really interesting, and really a lack of emotional resonance because the technology is on the front end of it, rather instead of the actual meat and potatoes of it, the story, the characters, and in some role-playing games, the actual role-playing. I mean, I'm even going to be honest, there's a lot of recent RPG games like, let's for say example, Avowed, made by Obsidian, where a lot of your choices in that game don't really matter. And in an RPG, a role-playing game, your choices have to matter on some way and level for the story to be shaped and actually feel like you're making impactful decisions. But a lot of these modern games like Avowed, they're just superficial. There's no impact. It's just there for the sake of having it there, like window dressing. And there was a time when Obsidian did make games with huge, vast consequences for some of your actions. I mean, the biggest one I'm clearly hinting at is Fallout New Vegas. I mean, Fallout New Vegas, you literally could be an absolute prick in that game, and you'll suffer the consequences for it, but those choices and options are there. Even if most players aren't going to pick those options and endings, them being there helps give that sense of change and role-playing in the world and helps make a story feel a lot stronger than if it didn't have that choice at all. So no, we aren't just jaded for the most part. A lot of these modern slop kind of games don't dive further into that. There's lack of risk being involved in making these sort of decisions and choices because, oh, we don't want to scare or frighten certain people, or we don't want to like upset a certain crowd. And then you notice the patterns of these kinds of games and stuff that's being put out. And then you realize that there is a lot of repetition formulas being circled around, especially with the open world formula. I mean, there are so many games that have come out that I have to ask, did they actually have to be open world games, or could they have been a nice, simple, linear game? I mean, in some of these open world games, there's clearly quantity over quality. You have these big, massive open worlds that are just so vast and huge. Something like Assassin's Creed Odyssey I'll bring up. As much as I enjoy that game's open world is so freaking massive and there's so much going on that it feels like a full-on multiplayer game at times. It's just a multiplayer game, but clearly still single player. I mean, we could go a step further where Valhalla clearly expanded on this even further to where, from what I've heard, because I've personally not played Valhalla, but from what I've heard from lots of people, that game was as wide as an ocean, literally, but deep as a puddle. There was just so much garbage in there that didn't need to be in there, and it could have easily been trimmed down and cut back a bit. But for the sake of appeasing and showing the shareholders that, oh, we're going bigger because bigger means better, you got open worlds like this. And sure, Assassin's Creed games have always been open world, but bigger doesn't always mean better. Usually having an open world be a lot more smaller and concise, but with lots upon lots of content that actually feels like quality was prioritized over quantity. But again, you see these kind of games and you're just like, why is there so much here? Is it just for the sake of keeping player attention? Which wouldn't be far off the truth given the fact that how multiplayer games are being made nowadays for. But still, it's like, even going back to Avowed, did that game really need to be open world? I mean, I haven't played it personally myself, but I've seen quite enough footage of it and people talking about it to where it's like, why did this need to be open world? Or at the very least, why wasn't it a little bit smaller in scale or a lot more focused? Or you could do like, let's take Uncharted 4. Uncharted 4 is a linear game, but it does kind of have open world elements compared to the trilogy, where a lot more open areas where they're free for you to how you could explore and tackle them, or even something like Metal Gear Solid 5 in particular had something like that. Why didn't they just go that route? You know, maybe having still that linear storytelling, but having these massive open areas and having those areas sort of fleshed out. And I know, I'm picking on Avowed, but it's true. Like, it's just a big prime example that I can think of to where games like that could have easily been more linear with open-ended levels instead of that weird mishmash RPG open world thing that they were trying to go for. But there's other games out there that can fall into this sort of category. And if you know any of them, feel free to let me know in the comments down below, because I'd be curious to know if there's other sort of pseudo open world games that could have really been more single player focused. Now, before I get to the last part of the video, if you enjoy the content so far, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell to know when I post another video. Also, check out my Rumble. It's a nice little backup I have just in case something might happen on YouTube. And also check out my live streams that I have every Saturday. Though this time for this stream, I'm going to set it to this Saturday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Got something I got to do at around 6 before I can come in on the stream. But we're going to shoot for 7 o'clock this Saturday. So hope to see you there. And anyway, let's get back to the video. Now, the last point I want to touch on as to why new games feel so boring, and it's probably going to be pretty obvious what this one is. It's the monetization models. I mean, why does every single game, both single player and multiplayer, really need to have so much monetization? And I'm just going to focus more on the single player in this video because I've talked to death about the multiplayer ones in previous videos. But like, why do games that are single player focused have monetization models like time boosters, double XP, shortcuts? Why are they in a single player game? I mean, sometimes, for the sake of even Assassin's Creed, modern Assassin's Creed games like Odyssey and Valhalla, they purposely throttle the XP as a way to get you to buy these, you know, little microtransaction boosters. Like, oh, it's no big deal. I'll just throw a couple bucks here just to make the game go by a little bit faster. I mean, there was a time where you didn't have to do that in games, where games were actually balanced and actually played by the developers to be fun instead of this weird milking the cow dry sort of mentality of the player base. Or even better, some games, even those single player games, launch buggy, broken, and disgusting, and they have the monetization shop all ready to go. Like, really? That's what you cared more about instead of actually making sure the game was functional, that I could boot it up and not crash or have Stutter City if I'm on a PC? Like, seriously, they launch these games unfinished and then focus more on the monetization instead of actually caring about the player experience. It's just dumb. It's stupid. And yeah, sure, they're microtransactions in a single player game. You don't have to purchase them. But the fact that they're there is what I find so stupid. Like, here's one thing I remembered. You ever heard of a game called Metal Gear Survive? A spin-off of the Metal Gear Solid games? Yeah, this game, and I think still to this day, to get more save slots, you had to purchase them with money. Why? In any other game, you could just create the save file and everything was fine. Why did you have to spend money for extra save files in that game? It's stupid. But then again, that game's not even the best game, so not many people even know or care to play it, but it's still, like, such a stupid thing. So, to wrap this all up, to end this more on a positive note, how can we find the spark? Like, how can we find newer games coming out that are actually fun and enjoyable to play? And I have one word to say. Indie. Indie is your best friend. If you're on PC, you're a lot more privileged. You got more options all across Steam, Epic Games, GOG, all those big platforms. Well, more so these three than the other ones. So You got those kind of games to look forward to that are actually more fun. Console sometimes gets them, but not always. Or just go back and check your backlogs and find old games, maybe more retro, or just older games that came out years ago, and just play those. Because what I find interesting is that there's a statistic that proves that people are playing more older games than actual newer games, and even I'm in that boat. I mean, I just checked out on a recent sale 2 games called Risen and Elix. 2 really good games that were made by, sadly, a now shut down studio called Piranha Games. But these are RPG games that actually feel like RPGs. They're a little clunky because they were made by a AA studio, but so far, checking them out for a little bit, despite the jank, they do feel a lot of fun to play. So definitely recommend them if you're okay with having a sort of RPG that's a little bit harder than normal, maybe more closer to Dark Souls, but not entirely. A little bit slightly easier, I think, so far, but time will tell. I'm not far in either of these games. I just got them on sale this week, so just wanted to point them out there that there's more good older games out there. And maybe try checking those out instead of playing the more new and modern slop. Because honestly, it's going to be a while till the AAA scene sort of pivots back to something better. And obviously, we are still getting some good AAA games out there, but they're far and few between with how they used to be before. So I'd say focus your more efforts on the indie scene and just going from there. But anyway, I think that's all I have to say in this video, and I'll see you with another one.